Okay, this story is simply entitled The Raven. This is an experience that I had when I was about 3 or 4 years old, I would say, or maybe 5 years old, I'm not sure, but I was very young. During these years of my youth, my mother was very involved in the local community theater, the Little Theater of Tuscarawas County in Ohio. And she was the costume mistress, and she would costume many of the shows at our theater. And there was a show going on during this time, and typically she would come home from work, she would cook us supper, we would eat supper, and then we would prepare to go to the theater. She would brush my hair, she would make sure I brushed my teeth or whatever, and bundle me up, and off we'd go. This was an evening like any other. There wasn't anything special about this evening. But my mother had a routine that she went through. And she would say to me after she bundled me up or got me ready, and in this case I think it was late fall, early winter because I did have a coat on. She would say, "Now Kimmy, go on outside and get in the car while Mommy locks up." So I would. And this happened every night that we had to go somewhere. She would tell me to go get in the car and wait for her while she locked up the house. So I proceeded to go out to wait for her in the car, and we lived on an alley and a main street, and there was no need for a long driveway because we lived on this alley, and Mother would just pull the car up right next to the side door of our house, and usually when I walked out the door she had the car facing that away so that I was right there at the passenger door, that I could just go out our kitchen door and open the door to the car and get in, close it, and wait for her to come out. And it was always maybe a minute or two before she locked up the house and joined me in the car. So I went out to get in the car, but this particular night Mother had parked the car facing that way, so that when I got outside onto the sidewalk, the driver's door was right there instead of the passenger door. So I had to walk around the car to the back and enter from the alley. I would be standing in the middle of the alley. So I got outside and I walked around to the back of the car, and it was a very dark night. It was nighttime. I don't remember a moon or anything like that, but I do remember that it was quite dark outside. And when I got around to the back of the car, something caught my eye, some movement way up here, way up the alley, caught my eye. And I turned and I looked up the alley and I saw what looked like a bird in flight at night, flying toward me. And I stood there, and I was just a little with it, 4 or 5 years old, probably couldn't have been this tall. So I stood there and I thought to myself, oh, a bird. Well, this was an unusual sight because it was night, and the bird kept getting closer and closer. I don't remember that it was really flapping its wings, but it was definitely flying toward me. And it got closer and closer and closer until it landed about, I would say, not more than 3 or 4 feet from where I was standing at the back of the car. It landed silently, and it just sat there with its wings folded at its side, with its head slightly turned toward me. But the thing about the bird was, it was at least 4 or 5 feet tall. It towered over me. I was paralyzed for a moment. Well, probably for several moments. I couldn't move as this bird just looked at me, 4 feet from where I'm standing. Suddenly, when I came out of my paralysis, I ran toward the house, and I don't know why I didn't re-enter the door I had just come out of. It would have been unlocked because my mother hadn't come outside yet. Instead, for some reason, I ran through the backyard to the back door of the house. The back door of the house was one of those patio doors. It was an old patio door, and it had those little panes of glass in it. And I ran up to the door, and my mother was standing there. She had just locked that door. And it was one of those old-timey little latch thingies with the little hole, and you put the lock thing in it. And I ran up to the door, and I tried the knob, but I couldn't get it open because she had locked it. But she's standing there, and she's looking at me, and I can't get the door open, and I start screaming, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy, let me in, let me in, let me in!" And I was inconsolable. I was so filled with fear and fright that I was just in hysterics, absolute hysterics. And I'm beating on those windows, and I'm beating on those windows. I say, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy, let me in, let me in." And she is paralyzed. She just stands there looking at me with this blank look on her face, and she can't move. Now, that didn't register. I just wanted her to let me in, and I know that it went through my mind, why isn't she opening the door, and I was just inconsolable. Finally, she came out of her paralysis, and she got this horrified look on her face when she saw I was, there was snot flying, there were tears, I was wet, I had busted or cracked one of the window panes with my little fists, and I was inconsolable. That's the best way that I can describe it. She finally unhooked that door, and the door flew open, and I just fall into her legs, and I'm clutching her for my life because I'm so afraid, and she can hardly catch her breath. She's saying, "My God, Kimmy, why, my God, what's wrong, what's wrong?" And I'm blubbering, the blackbird is a big blackbird, and I'm just blubbering, trying to explain what's just happened. Finally, I calmed down enough that she gets out of me this incredible story. And of course, I'm 4 or 5, and she chalked it up to my imagination, and I think any mother would probably chalk that experience up to a child's vivid imagination. All I can tell you is that was a very, very real experience. It was not something that was created out of my imagination for the sake of creating some unbelievable drama. It was a very, very real event. And it was an event that I discovered over 50 years later what the importance of that event was. And I'll tell this story in order of how it came to me, and I'll finish this story up for you and tell you what I learned about this raven, this particular raven, and tell you some funny things that have happened along the way as well. So with that, I hope you'll stay tuned for the next story, and I wish you all well. Thanks for watching.